an evaluation of Mastodon, the new third-party clients, and more. This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide is a fleet visibility solution for Mac, Windows, and Linux that can help you securely scale your business. Learn more at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, during the MacVoices live shows on and off camera and in just general conversation, two of our MacVoices panelists have talked about their experiments and research with some of the Mastodon clients. Since we're all looking at possible alternatives to Twitter, just in case, or maybe just by choice that you want to move off Twitter, I thought it'd be a good idea to get them together, ask if they would share some of what they've discovered or what their preferences are, and may help you make at least a little bit better informed decision, because everything right now is really new when it comes to Mastodon. So first up, Mr. Eric Bolden is here. Eric, great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Great to be here. Looking forward to
Mr. Jeff, oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, just looking forward to a nice topic.
Yeah, I am too. Jeff Gamet is here as well, who has been experimenting with, well, Jeff is always experimenting with everything. So, Jeff,
it's how I roll. Chuck, it's always great to get to hang out with you. And Eric, I feel like this is a special treat for me because usually I get to see you only once a week.
An extra bonus.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and again, I know a couple folks have talked about that they use a client, but you two have been pretty open about the fact that you've been looking at a bunch of them and experimenting and trying to decide what you like or what you don't like. So, there are a lot of places we could start, but how about if we just start with the basics? And that is iOS or Mac. What are your primary use cases for Mastodon, and which platforms are you focusing on? Eric, you want to start us?
I primarily focused on iOS, and it's because I want something that works wherever I happen to be sitting or walking or standing or whatever. I want something to use if I'm at a conference. I want something to use just for browsing. If I'm done reading a book, I want to look at something online. I'm not going to get up and go walk over to the computer. I'm going to sit and just call something up on the phone or check something over lunch. So for me, it was iOS. I do want to be able to check from iPad and from macOS, but I found I have different solutions, and primarily it's on iOS.
Okay. Jeff, how about you? Are you focusing on the Mac side or the iOS side, or trying to do both?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm across the board. I'm experimenting on Mac OS, iOS, and iPad OS. And it's interesting because there are different options depending on what platform you are testing on. So, yeah, I'm across the board.
It might be interesting just as some kind of baseline, if there is such a thing for this. Jeff, what was your preferred Twitter client on Mac or iOS?
My preferred Twitter client was Tweetbot, and close second was Twitterific.
Okay, Eric, how
was
about
on
you?
all platforms.
Oh. Okay.
I ended up with either the web or the Twitter default client. There was a hiccup at one point where a bunch of the third-party clients weren't working correctly, and I never really recovered from that. So,
okay, just decided to go with the mothership itself. Okay. All right. So, right now we're looking at 1.0 versions of these apps or less in pretty much all cases. What are some of the features you think that are essential at this point? Maybe for yourself, if you have a specific use case, or just in general, what should people be looking for?
Jeff? It's All right, so here's
Look
the
at-
thing.
You look like you're in pain, Jeff.
Well, because I think that's actually a hard question to answer. First, we are in a very exciting time in the Mastodon world. I mean, you said this is all new. Well, yes and no. Mastodon has been around for a few years, but this explosion of client apps, that's what's new. And it's great because it's like the early days of Twitter where there are so many options and you can try so many things and figure out what it is that you like the best, and then settle on whatever app or web browser experience, whatever it is that works best for you. That said, the things that I think are the most important right now are finding apps that run on the platforms that you prefer and then give you an interface that you're comfortable with. And I know that sounds kind of vague, but as far as features go, generally speaking, we're looking at feature parity across the board. So what really matters is find something that presents the content to you in a way that makes sense to you.
Okay, that's pretty good advice, and probably shouldn't be surprising given the variety of interfaces we saw with Twitter clients. And we keep going back to Twitter simply because Facebook is Facebook. You know, you're going to use their app or the web or else. And Instagram's not a lot better. So Twitter was the one where a lot of experimentation was being done. Eric, how about you? What do you feel like you're seeing, and what feature set are you really looking for, other than the portability?
So the first time I used Twitter was to go to a conference and comment back and forth between a group of us. So I thought that in looking at clients, that was something I should repeat. So I went to a garden show and I said, well, if I'm at a garden show and I see some stuff and I want to comment on it, can I do that? 2 months ago, the answer would have been not without losing all my hair. And I still have a little left. There's a tiny bit, so I don't want to risk it. Now, yes, it is doable. I think the important thing for everyone to know is you can use a web browser, stay away from all of the clients, and still accomplish everything. Mm-hmm. That's actually kind of nice. The second thing for me is I don't like Mastodon's client. I found it not helpful and frustrating. That might change. Everybody's clients are changing. I think any client that has not been updated within the last 6 months, maybe even within the last 2 months, you probably should avoid, because there are so many changes that are happening right now that you want an active client. So that's kind of part of what to look for. For me, I had a list of things. I wanted the ability to edit a post. And the reason would be, for instance, going to a conference, I could ahead of time say, well, I want to visit this vendor's booth and this other vendor's booth, and I could put the information in ahead of time. And then when I get to the booth, just edit that particular post and repost it with the additional information or a picture. And it was easier than having to try and type everything while I was there. I want to be able to tell that there is alt text on a picture, and to be able to easily add alt text to a picture. Adding alt text to a picture is sort of it's an important thing in the Mastodon universe. If you don't do it, your posts don't go anywhere, and people are cranky about it. It makes a big difference, and people comment on it. So being able to do that easily, I think, is important with whatever client you pick. For me personally, I want to be able to easily take an image that I'm looking at. I want to be able to save it to my local device. preferably, either right click or long press or whatever, within one step, just save the image. Oddly enough, that seemed to be somewhat difficult. Some clients allowed it, other clients didn't. Some clients allowed it only for certain versions of Mastodon servers. I don't know why it's so difficult, but it wasn't everywhere. I want to be able to easily bookmark a post. Sometimes it was a little bit difficult to figure out how to do it, and to share a post. That was most of the functionality I was looking for.
Interesting. So it sounds like as opposed to a strictly social media interaction, you were almost looking at it as a tool.
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
I like your list. That's a good list of features right there.
Jeff, if it's a good list, what would you add to it? Anything, or does that pretty much cover yours?
What I would add is cross-platform, meaning I can use the same app with a similar interface across all the different types of devices that I use, so that I can have consistency. That's a very big ask today. So it's something that I'm looking at down the road. Where we are today with the Mastodon clients, I don't think it's fair to expect to have the same app experience from the same app across all your devices, because developers are having to write this stuff like today. As an example, the public alpha of Ivory, as we're recording, dropped today. And public alpha for the Mac of Ivory dropped today, and so that's how early we are in the development of these apps. Developers have been scrambling since that big keg of gasoline and lit match was tossed into the Twitter dumpster, and they can only work so fast.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Our sponsor Kolide has some big news. If you're an Okta user, they can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. How? If a device isn't compliant, the user can't log into your cloud apps until they fix the problem. It's that simple. Kolide patches one of the major holes in zero trust architecture, device compliance. Without Kolide, IT struggles to solve basic problems by keeping everyone's OS and browser up to date. Unsecure devices are logging into your company's apps because there's nothing there to stop them. Kolide is the only device trust solution that enforces compliance as part of authentication, and it's built to work seamlessly with Okta. The moment Kolide's agent detects a problem, it alerts the user and gives them instructions on how to fix it. If they don't fix the problem within a set period of time, they're blocked. Kolide's method means fewer support tickets, less frustration, and most importantly, 100% fleet compliance. Visit Kolide.com to learn more or book a demo. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for supporting this week's MacVoices. I would agree with the cross-platform. That's pretty important to me. The one other thing that I haven't heard either one of you mention is I might add discoverability of people that are on Mastodon. I'd like to see that streamlined, just because I personally am not necessarily moving from Twitter, but I'm fleshing out my Mastodon presence and want to connect with the people that I want to connect with on Mastodon if they're there. And I think this is going to be extra important in the coming months or longer as commercial operations move toward Mastodon or add Mastodon. Because right now it seems like the saturation of commercial operations, and I'm thinking, the large companies, software developers, hardware developers, no, they all pretty much have Twitter presences, unless they've consciously made a decision to leave. But Mastodon, not so much, maybe just because it's sort of the wild, wild west at the moment. And the Fediverse can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not paying extra attention like we have been for the past few months.
Well, for companies, there's an added level of complexity in joining Mastodon because not only is there the whole thing about, well, what instance do you join? But for businesses, there's also the thing, should we have our own instance? And businesses need to really look at that and decide what's going to work best for them. So my guess is that there's a lot of companies that are sitting back watching to see what happens with Mastodon, and then they're also watching a lot of the other social media platforms that have either started getting some visibility or are just spinning up now, because it's already so difficult for a company to stay on top of what they're doing on social media, with the old school go-tos. That would be what, Facebook, Instagram, um, um, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and now they're and then throw TikTok in there, and now they're looking at Mastodon and Post.news and what's the one that just opened up a couple days ago publicly? Spoutable. Anyhow, there's a ton of these things that are out there, and it's just too much, I think, for businesses to have to try and sift through today. They need to watch for a while.
And the one other thing I'll add to that is that, especially with the newer options out there, they aren't built into some of the tools for posting and cross-posting. And
True.
so, as a result, you're going to have to hire somebody to post to. Maybe you can do it with what was your term, Jeff? The old school social medias. But for the new ones, they're going to have to do individual posts for a while until things thin out a little bit. So that can become burdensome, to say the least.
Yeah, the big players in social media management platforms have added Mastodon support, and that's a relatively recent thing for them. But the fact that they're adding it in sounds to me like an endorsement for businesses to look at Mastodon more seriously.
Good point. That could be a whole nother discussion about businesses being on social media and some of the new social medias, but we're here to talk about the clients. So, Eric, I'm going to ask you to start with what client or clients you have been exploring. Can't talk.
Okay, I have 4 clients. So a web browser was one, and I picked that because you can use it on any of your devices. That really is the cross-platform answer right now. It's mostly the same interface. On a phone, you get only one column unless you turn your phone sideways, and then you can get more than one column. But effectively, it looks pretty much the same. And you can use your favorite browser, and it is reasonably comfortable. Then I picked Ice Cubes, Ivory for Mastodon, and Toot ! For Mastodon. The kind of going back to my earlier criteria, I wanted to make sure that anything I selected had been recently updated. Toot I had been using for quite a while. Still not entirely sure about the name, but it is on version 19.0 right now. The last update was February 8th, and does almost everything I would want it to do. Plus, it has a really nice indication of conversations. And that's one thing in Mastodon. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out, is there more information above the post you're on or below? Are there a lot of things? And it puts a little graphical thing up on the side saying, yep, there's like 3 different conversations below, and there's one thing feeding into it. So you can kind of jump back and forward and branch out to kind of figure out what was going on. Ivory for Mastodon, it just has a really nice interface. It looks good. It is really young. It was 1.0.2. Last update I had was from the 7th of February. It has a fairly nice
update.
Oh, it just did another one? It has a fairly nice new user experience. It's fairly welcoming, pretty upbeat. And that's one of the pain points of Mastodon is just how do I get started? It tries to kind of take you through that process a little bit and kind of handhold you, and it looks good. If I had really any criticism of Ivory, it's that there are lots of icons, and I haven't figured out what they all do yet.
Yes.
And the icons and the functionality I was looking for, I wasn't finding. So I liked how it looked, but it frustrated me. So I kind of use it off and on. I expect eventually it will be a favored client, but it hasn't quite made it there yet. Toot from Mastodon, kind of going back on the new user thing, it kind of walks you through it. It's a little rough. They really haven't changed that interface much. The coloring on it, for those of us that are colorblind, is a little bit difficult to read, but does kind of help you find a server and fill in that form to get you kind of to the next step. Ice cubes, I've been really impressed with that. That last update I had was from 12th of February. It's version 1.4.7 was what I was looking at. They update once a day, at least. They might update more frequently if they're able to. They've got more than one developer working on it. It's an open source project, so you can actually go on GitHub and look and actually see what they're doing. The new user experience is pretty basic. Kind of it opens up to add an account screen, and the assumption I think is that you kind of know what you're supposed to do and can sort of jump in. It doesn't have a video like Toot does that kind of gives you an overview of everything Mastodon. It just kind of throws it up there and, good luck. Once you get your account information in there, then it's actually pretty good. Most of the features that I wanted, were there. Re-editing, adding alt tags, editing a post, bookmarking a post, sharing a post, that was all there. Indications of conversations. Yeah, I just pretty much it all was there. The only weakness / irritation, I guess, for me was trying to save an image. It doesn't work all the time. It seems to matter which Mastodon server you're on. And I don't know what the pattern is. In a future update, maybe it will get better. It didn't seem to be there last week, and it's there this week. So like anything else, it's kind of new. But with the exception of the issue of saving images, I spend, I think, most of my time on ice cubes. If I have to do a bunch of image saving, then I switch to Toot. Ivory I keep going back to just because it looks good, but again, I haven't figured out what the icons are. That seems to be a failing for all of the clients. There really isn't. You can't go to YouTube and say, hey, let me watch a video of what the interface is and what does it do. If you go to the company's websites, there really isn't a page that's, here are all the icons and this is what they do. It's, I think, just too recent. It hasn't happened yet.
Jeff and Eric are back in the next edition of MacVoices to talk more about their experimentation with all of the Mastodon third-party clients that are appearing and are changing on almost a daily basis. They tell us what they like, what they would like to see, and a lot more. That's next time on MacVoices. We'll see you then. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.